Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm pleased that we are where we are today. We are here to consider legislation that is necessarily detailed and complex, but the reason we're here is pretty simple. After 150 years, the Electoral Count Act needs some modest updates. Those of us on the committee know it. I believe that all our colleagues in the Senate know it, and the American people certainly know it. Now, clearly, when a 150-year-old law has successfully brought us certainty, finality, and one orderly presidential inauguration after another, we need to be delicate and careful with any changes. But the chaos that came to a head on January 6th of last year strongly suggests that we find careful ways to clarify and streamline the process. And so does what happened actually in January of 2001, January of 2005, and January of 2017. For more than 20 years now, every time voters pick a Republican president, we've seen at least some Democrats in Congress resist the people's decision and try to challenge the electoral count. So the situation obviously called for careful, methodical, and bipartisan work to arrive at a careful, methodical, and bipartisan product. It's clear that only a bipartisan compromise originating in the Senate can actually become law. One party going it alone would be a non-starter. In my view, the House bill is a non-starter. We have one shot to get this right, and fortunately for all of us, fortunately for the country, an outstanding working group of senators rolled up their sleeves. I especially want to thank Senator Collins for her leadership, Senator Blunt for his commitment to the process, Senators Capito, Murkowski, Portman, Romney, Sass, Tillis, and Young were also instrumental on our side of the aisle. Obviously, their Democratic counterparts worked hard to make this happen as well. I strongly support the Collins legislation as introduced, and assuming that we make no changes here today, or at the most technical changes, I'll be proud to vote for it and to help advance it. The substance of this bill is common sense. It's common sense to modestly increase, as others have said here, the threshold for objections to the electoral count so that Congress still has options in case of a truly extraordinary circumstance. But we avoid an arms race where objections with almost no support paralyze the process every 4 years. It's common sense to make the already clear fact of the 12th Amendment even clearer still, that the Vice President obviously has no personal discretionary power over the presidential vote. It is common sense to protect states' primacy in appointing their electors, but also strengthen requirements that states publicize their rules before the elections and stick to them. It's common sense to make technical fixes to other related laws like the Presidential Transitions Act. And it's common sense that our colleagues left chaos-generating bad ideas on the cutting room floor, like a massive federal takeover of election law or inventing new causes of action for litigation that would throw every election into the courts. The legislation before us with this text in this form is Congress' one option to get an outcome. And in my view, this is not an opportunity we should pass up. So in closing, I want to again thank my colleagues for their weeks and weeks of hard work on this. Let's preserve the legislation as introduced and report out this important bill. Thank you, Madam Chairman.